I'm now live! Yay and happiness! Happy Monday, everybody. Today is Complete Motivation Monday. Always music, always music. Music is not just Monday for me, it's every day. But oh my gosh, for those of you who don't know, I have a master's degree in community counseling, and the mental health of the creative artist is so freaking important to me. It is truly what the purpose of my page is, to not only help support artists in every genre or people who just want to learn how to feel comfortable in their skin. It's so important for me to focus on the well-being of artists out there because of the fact that we are highly sensing. The majority of us are empaths, and sometimes a lot of us get lost in not knowing how to channel that energy in a productive way. And you can be super freaking talented, and that talent will get lost and wasted if the depressive side of you kicks in and consumes you. It's one of those bittersweet sort of victories, those bittersweet freaking side effects of being creative genius, or just being somebody who is born gifted. So I'm so excited because tonight I have Dr. Suri here, who's not only a professional in the mental health field, he's also a YouTuber. So he's a creative as well. He's taking what he knows. He has started a channel on YouTube talking about relationships and success, all sorts of tools that we could use to sort of build ourselves for optimal performance. And I'm so excited to talk with him today. This is going to be a total improv kind of conversation, as are all of my interviews. But the thing you're going to get from me tonight is the science geek. I am a complete freaking nerd. And I don't mind it at all. I love being a nerd. I freaking love it. I love it, love it, love it. And I'm kind of mental health on my P's and Q's. I know my shit. So I'm so happy to bring him in. And let me see if he's here and ready to be pulled in. Oh, I know he's stoked about this too. Yay and happiness. Awesome sauce. We're just waiting for him to get in. Yay and happiness, Dr. Suri. Yay.
Hello.
Hi, I am just so honored and grateful for you to take time out of your schedule to have this chat with me. I in the preface, I was talking about how it's so important, I believe, for creative artists to learn how to manage that emotional part of themselves. Because I know for me, my story is when I was 18, I wound up having an academic discharge from a very prestigious choir college because I was unable to deal with the trauma I had experienced in my youth. And the irony of that is a lot of the trauma is what channeled me into being such a great artist, So that's the thing. And it's really, really important for me to not only have other artists and creative people understand that that's okay. It's not something that they have to carry any shame about. But there are so many beautiful qualities in that just make us better at what we do. So
Absolutely.
Thank you for being here. I met you through the convention that we went to, a YouTubers convention.
Yes. And thank you for having
what
me.
exactly? Go ahead, love. I'm sorry.
I was just saying thank you for having me. It's my first time ever going live on Instagram, and I'm so glad I'm doing it with you. It's so fun. So
Yay and happiness, dude. I really love your work. I think you are so committed to the cause. You are so committed to the cause. You're so insightful, and your videos freaking rock, man. They really do.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
They're so good.
It's funny because we'll talk more about this, but it's the trauma side, right? It's the trauma side, it's the anxiety, all of that. When we learn how to listen to that, it's my creative outlet. Like, I don't think many people know. I don't monetize any of my content. I don't make a single dollar. I don't plan to make a single dollar. It's my outlet. It's my passion. So I'm
Yeah.
glad that you like it. I'm glad it comes true. And I'm excited for this. Let's
Oh,
talk.
yay and happiness. So, how long? Golly, I want to know sort of your timeline. All right.
Uh-huh.
So, like, where did you start out? Like, what made you get interested in psychology? What's your story?
My story. All right. Well, my story, there are a lot of layers, as to all of us. But my story started back in India. That's where I was born and raised. And I went to, I was lucky enough to go through schooling at a very early age, and I was able to skip through a lot of grades by just taking exams and stuff. So I started medical school when I was 16, and I finished medical school by the age of 21 or 22. And the reason I'm mentioning that is even after doing all of that and kind of like, being in this person where, you know, everyone was like, wow, that's amazing. The inside of me was all so anxious, and there were so many parts of me that I was like just hiding
Yeah.
from everyone. And I went through all of that, and I went to medical school, and still I didn't realize psychology was my passion until I started dabbling into like, hey, I know enough about body. I want to know more about the mind.
Yeah.
So I started doing that. I was actually just going to visit the US like just for a couple of years to get like a master's in psychology to see, how I can integrate it in my practice. And it was just a stumbling stone. Like I just stumbled upon it, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" So I
Yes.
stayed. I got my doctorate in psychology, and it just became a passion that started kind of like fueling me, and I started kind of like becoming more of my own, and I started dabbling into my own experiences, and that's just how I ended up here.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
It's
So it
it's
was not
amazing.
planned.
It's
It
amazing.
was.
The whole area of psychology is a
Uh-huh.
relatively new field in the sciences, you know? And one
Absolutely.
of the things that I was fascinated about was just early treatment when things were understood, if you look back
Mm-hmm.
like through the centuries, you know?
Yeah.
And I think what's so beautiful about the time that we're living in is now we're
Mm-hmm.
finally at a point where it's more than correlation because of the
Yes.
technology that's involved,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to support what
Definitely.
these theories are. So I
Uh-huh.
love that.
Yeah. And we are as a society, we are becoming more aware of mental health, and not just mental health in the sense of like just not just in the sense of like mental health disorders, right? Like if you look at my channel, I rarely talk about the clinical side of things. I
Yeah.
rarely talk about the clinical disorders, but just being aware of our mental health and just embracing certain parts and experiences, how that impacts our day-to-day life. You know,
Yes.
that's why I named my channel Intentional Living, that it's about our life. Like, every single day, how we are relating to other people, how we are investing in ourselves, how we are investing in other people, small little decisions, small little passions and drives, and nurturing those. And I think we are just getting started as a society to understand that layer of mental health and that layer of psychology that we live every single day, but we don't stop to think about it because we are so focused on, you know,
Oh,
external environment. We don't always have the time or the energy to focus inwardly. So,
absolutely. I've been
yeah.
utilizing intentional living, and you know what? I
Mm-hmm.
love for decades now, and I love that I am a peer clinician. The
Mm-hmm.
lived experience for me has been able to help me connect with clients who
Yeah.
are really suffering in ways that I think somebody who
Mm-hmm.
hasn't gone through lived experiences has. And there's a whole movement right now. It's a peer movement,
Yeah.
which is
Mm-hmm.
so beneficial, I believe, you know. But the
Yeah.
premise of intentional living. So I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder,
Mm-hmm.
and I have implemented mindfulness to dramatically change my life.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain to my viewers right now what exactly is mindfulness? What is this? Because people
Yeah.
throw the word around, but explain to my viewers
Mm-hmm.
what that is.
Yeah. All right. Well, I am glad you asked that. We're gonna geek out on the nerdy
Yeah, we
side of
are. We're gonna be
things,
nerds. I
right?
love it. I'm
So
such
we're
a
gonna
psych
get
nerd. I
get
love
right
it.
into it. And so, we have a lot of similar sounding terms that I want to separate out. So we
Yes,
have
yes,
something called meditation,
yes,
right? Which has a lot of Eastern roots in Hinduism, in Buddhism, uh, and then as it came to the West, we started studying it, and we found a lot of good uses of that. And stemmed out of that is mindfulness breathing,
yes,
right? Which is a lot of us are familiar with. And when we use like apps like Headspace and Calm and those apps with breathing exercises, is being about present, is being about mindful. Like your mind is full of one single focus. And in mindfulness breathing, that focus becomes our breath. But
yeah,
the thing with mindfulness is mindfulness breathing, mindful is part of that mindfulness breathing, right? So mindful in itself is just being aware, your mind being full of one single focus.
yeah,
And we can do mindful eating, we can do mindful walking, we can have mindful conversations like what we are having right now,
yeah,
right? Having a single focus and being aware of your inner thoughts and your experiences, all your five senses, and just listening to that and how your inner world is interacting with your external world, right? Like with PTSD, like what in our environment is like quote unquote triggering. I don't even like that because oftentimes we have this connotation of like, oh, trigger just means on and off, like right, like we went from 0 to 100, and I am all about paying attention to the nuances. Like, how did we get there?
yeah,
Right? So, even if there is a tiny little episode of like 30 seconds before the trigger, I want to focus on that. And for me, that's mindful. That's the being the focus of that. Right. And I don't know how geeky you want to get into, but our brains,
I
like,
want to
you
go
know
all geek with
this.
you, Dr. Suri. I want to go all
Right.
freaking geek with you. I am ready to
Yeah.
meet you where you're at. All right.
Yeah, no. So
Yeah.
like our brains, like I'm sure like people have heard like like, oh, we only use 10% of our brain power at any one given point. We can't use more than 10 or 14%, right? Except in sci-fi movies. But the focus can be how scattered that is. And
Yes.
mindfulness, I think practicing being mindful is very similar to practicing being intentional in every single moment, being aware. And when we focus on that, if we are focusing on our sensory experience, which is a great way to get started, especially if you have complex mental health issues, experiences with anxiety and depression that you're just getting started on, there are a lot of like bodily experiences that come with that. It's a great way to stay focused on your body because you have to listen to your body before you can start listening up here, right? And I think just focusing, when we start focusing on our bodily experiences, our five senses, we use this part of our brain, the parietal lobes.
Yeah.
And again, we are bringing the mindful focus of our brain activity to a focused area. And a lot of times, what that also does is like the thinking parts of our brain, the emotional parts of our brain, they just get a little bit of breather. Even if it's for just a few seconds or a minute or two, they get a little bit of breather. And
Yes.
sometimes that's all we need to snap out of that kind of like state of mind that we get stuck in, right?
Yes.
Or like for a perspective shift, that that snapping out can happen if we just simply focus. Okay, how am I feeling right now? How's my heart rate right now? What's my breathing rate, right? Or if something about our conversation, like we are talking, if I start feeling a little uncomfortable, I'm gonna kind of like do a quick little check-in with myself internally of like, hey, what's going on right now? What might be, getting me there so I can intervene before we get there.
Yeah.
And it's a practice, it's a skill set.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what,
So,
too? I just want to emphasize I don't believe that people should get stuck in their diagnoses. You know what I'm saying?
oh
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
that there's so
totally.
many overly misdiagnosed cases because the
Mm-hmm.
brain is an amazing, um, vast
Uh-huh.
concept that no
Yeah.
one person can
Mm-hmm.
say you are this, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the thing that I
Yeah.
believe. So, you know, I think a lot of us who are creatives, you know, we undermine that gifted part as soon as we
Mm-hmm.
hear somebody tell us, oh, well, this is wrong with you, you know?
Yeah.
No, I don't think anything's wrong with you, because I also
Mm-hmm.
believe that mental illness to some capacity, and I'm not talking about like schizophrenia and all of these
Right.
manageable
Yeah.
disorders,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm talking about like over and complex uh, depressions. I
Right.
think are not only manageable, but over
Mm-hmm.
time you could
Yep.
totally shift your life and become empowered through it, you know, and it does not have to be
Absolutely.
such a big deal. So talk
Uh-huh.
about that a little bit. How because I want to get rid of all freaking stigma. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and you know, that's so, so true. I'm gonna go on a quick tangent about that diagnosis
Yeah.
piece because I feel I get worked up on that,
Yeah.
right? Which is it's different than medical diagnosis. With medical diagnosis, you know, if you have an injured foot, we are diagnosing the condition, but we know the cause, right?
Yes.
With diabetes, we know the cause of like, oh, your pancreas are above 90% damage. At this point, that's why you're getting to like the diagnosis of diabetes type 2. And with so many medical diagnoses, we have cause that we tie to. Mental health disorders are different. Mental health disorders are just like a collection, a cluster of symptoms, right? Like these are the set of symptoms that I'm seeing at this point of time. They say absolutely nothing about the cause, and
Yeah.
they say absolutely nothing about the prognosis, which the non-medic, which basically just means for people who are not familiar, you
Yeah.
are, but basically means what 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 the outcome potentially could be of your treatment,
Yeah.
right? So I don't think mental health diagnosis should be seen in that way, you know, and I really feel very strongly about taking away the stigma from it because it says nothing about, you know, like yes, you might have anxiety, but that anxiety, it could be what kept you alive,
Yeah.
right? It kept you physically or emotionally safe. It was a lot of times it's a defense mechanism that we needed to be where we are. And I can talk about, you know, my experience. I I haven't shared this much on social media with people, but I was a very, very, very anxious kid, you
Yeah.
know, and uh, for a number of reasons, some of which were trauma experiences, right? And that trauma manifested as anxiety,
Yeah.
and it manifested as OCD at my early life years. And oftentimes, what I needed to do in order to address that was eat. Eating was the only thing that I had in control, and again, like because of like the combination of those things, I I gained a lot of weight and I
Yeah.
got bullied. Like when imagine like you know like middle school, high school, and then I'm getting more bullied. It ties back into that anxiety, into that trauma, right? It creates that complex loop of bullying and anxiety and trauma and eating and then having like body image concerns again
Yeah.
because the anxiety is so externally focused as well. You know, I'm trying to please what others' views are.
Yeah.
And I was lost in that loop for many, many, many years, even until, you know, until like my post my teen years, actually. Uh, and that's, but if it weren't for those experiences, I can guarantee I wouldn't be where I am today.
I know, and
Because
that's the whole
it's,
thing. I
yeah,
talk about this concept of reframing, Dr. Suri, which is
uh-huh,
like so important to me, because I'm like queen of reframe. You could take anything
yeah,
that you've gone through and be
mm-hmm,
able to put it in a different light based on how you choose to perceive something.
right,
And I truly believe that, like, as crazy as the things that I've been through in life, like,
mm-hmm,
I had to go through those things exactly to be the
yeah,
person I am now, because the
mm-hmm,
outcome would have been different had I not gone through those experiences. And you know what?
yeah,
Goddamn, I
absolutely,
love myself. I love
uh-huh,
myself, you know? So
yeah,
if that's what it took to get there, you
mm-hmm,
know, then people have got to learn to love their experiences
yeah,
if they're able to take that and shift it
Mm-hmm.
to a place of empowerment. You know, there are no
Yeah.
victims here. No, are no victims
No.
here.
No victims. No victims. But yes, absolutely. You know, and sometimes it can be hard to see that if you're, you know,
In it.
if
When you're
in
in
it.
it, you can't
Yes.
see it.
Yeah.
When you're in it, you can't see
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, you can, but it's going to be worth it if you continue leaning in on yourself and you continue leaning in on others around you that you can trust,
Yeah.
right? Like I think that's the key of embracing yourself, as you said, empowering yourself through that experience, whatever those experiences might be, and however long that journey might be.
Yeah.
Like coming out of that is such an empowering experience. Like I often talk about some of the most difficult phases of my life, and if I had a chance to undo any of that, I'm not sure I will.
Yeah.
You know, because they were extremely painful in the moment, but I can pinpoint parts or points in my life where I made decisions based on those
Yes.
experiences. Right.
Yes.
So I hope that if anyone in the audience like is going through something, like it's like it encourages them to continue staying strong and embracing themselves, because what you're going through right now, you're building yourself to where you need to be to deal with your life and your environment. It's not a competition. You don't have to compete with anyone else. It is, you were dealt a certain set of cards and you're doing the best you can with those cards, and to win at this game of life with the cards that you were dealt, you are on that journey. You just have to stay strong and you have to keep going. So I hope if anyone needs to hear that
Yeah.
this is resonating with them.
Yeah, and then tying it back to mindfulness and
Mm-hmm.
intentional living, right? So the
Yeah.
key here, I think, for many people is to really tune in and do those self checks, because
Mm-hmm.
you can go through a situation, right? But a
Yeah.
lot of people fall into that cycle when they keep repeating the situations, or
Mm-hmm.
they in turn throw themselves into situations
Yeah.
that are bad, and they know they're
Mm-hmm.
harmful, but they don't know how to sort of refrain from doing that. So can
Yeah.
you talk about that a little bit, and what are some maybe tips for recognizing things in
Uh-huh.
yourself?
Yeah. You know, I talk a lot about this, that two things that I think sum it up for me, at least in my head. One is, we tend to sacrifice long-term gains for
Yeah.
short-term comfort. And that's one of the big problems that we have. Uh, because when we are looking at, oh, I just want this anxiety to stop right now, right? And a lot of times we are like, oh, let me get myself some wine and, that will resolve the anxiety. Again, with no judgment, right? If that's what you need to do tonight, go for it.
Yeah.
Do that. But also, as soon as you get in a little bit better place where you can listen to yourself, be intentional about why were you feeling anxious,
Yeah.
right? What in that environment, what in that moment was creating that anxiety, and not run away from that. Because as soon as the whatever the short-term benefit is, it can be avoidance. Like how many times do we avoid, right? Or when we are having a difficult situation with a partner or a close friend, or someone in our life, we avoid having that conversation because it's uncomfortable. That's an example of like short-term comfort, but in the long run nothing changes,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's one of the big things where we can kind of like get stuck. And intentionality, listening to your mind. And you can be intentional and still make those choices, right? You can still be intentional and identify like, oh, I'm having this friction, I need to talk it out with my with so and so, but I'm not in that place right now. So what can I do to care for myself at this point of time? How can I listen to my own needs first? And then as you start doing that, you'll feel more in control, you'll feel more empowered. And but then go ahead and do that next step,
Yeah.
right? And that's the intentional piece. The unintentional, the automatic piece, the second part that I was talking about is it's not just us, not just the conscious mind, the subconscious mind also loves that. I often say our brains will always choose familiarity over healthy.
Yeah.
What's familiar, what's comfortable comes before what's better. And that's a difficult concept for a lot of people because we assume like, oh, of course, like if this is better for me, if this is healthy for me, of course I will choose that. And we think that until we have to make choices in life. But when we have to make choices in life, I've seen often our brains go with what's familiar,
Yeah.
right? And that's why oftentimes we get stuck in certain loops in life. We get stuck with certain decisions that we keep making over and over, hoping for a different result without doing something different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just because it's our comfort zone,
Yeah.
But we can't keep doing the same thing, or we can't keep staying in the same environment and expect different results. So,
Yeah.
so for me, the intentionality, the intentional living is the balance of listening to your mind and listening to your body, doing what you need to do in that moment to calm yourself, to care for yourself, to empower yourself, but then taking that next step of changing that as well at your own pace when you're ready to go there.
Yeah.
So to
I
me, that's the balance.
I want to talk a little bit too, because you know what I think ties into this
Uh-huh.
intentionality is
Oof.
also a motivation factor, right? Because
Yes. Mm-hmm.
motivation, it prefaces what the action is, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think a lot of the times, when I was working with clients who were really, really struggling,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, and I've found this when I'm talking to artists as well, the
Yeah.
motivation has to be bigger than us sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know? So if I'm working with a client who has experienced homelessness for like almost 2 decades, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and has also been drug addicted, and you know, but then he finds out a family member had like a near death experience, so like
Mm-hmm.
that has him change his life because
Yes.
he wants to make sure that he's doing better for his child. You know what I'm saying? So it's
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
like there are these things
Mm-hmm.
that for dramatic change to occur,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the motivation has to be stronger. But how do we develop a willingness to submit to our motivations? So
Yeah. Uh, I absolutely just love that example, like that you just gave. Like it's so beautiful. Like, yes, there are those key moments in our life that I often think of like motivation is not like a linear thing. It's a stepwise ladder. And those kind of like moments, there are key moments in our lives where we have an opportunity to step up, to take the next step in the
yeah,
ladder. Uh, but that being said, I think the biggest piece is also preparing, working on ourselves regularly. And when I say working on ourselves, I don't really mean, you know, self improvement from a place of self loathing, or, you can hate yourself into growth, which is often what I see.
thank you so much for saying that, because
Yeah.
I'm telling you, like, I preach this all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, like, when I was challenging myself to live in an obese body after my daughter was born, it's because
Mm-hmm.
I told myself, listen, you've got to learn yourself no matter what the hell you look like. What
Absolutely.
whatever is going on, whatever is going on. And I
Mm-hmm.
was in a situation where I was just coming out of spending like 2 months in a burn unit with my son while I was pregnant
Uh-huh.
with my daughter. And
Uh-huh.
like I really had, because in my mind, people get
Uh-huh.
it twisted, artists get it twisted, people
Mm-hmm.
in the public eye get it twisted.
Yeah.
It's not about appearances. It is not
Mm-hmm.
about appearances. This is about
No.
self-love and
Uh-huh.
respect for yourself. And the more you have that, the
Mm-hmm.
more, that's where your glow comes from. That's
Yeah.
where the glow comes from. You know what I'm
Absolutely.
saying? I say it all
Mm-hmm.
the time. If you're not loving yourself as you
Mm-hmm.
are in your most flawed moments,
Yeah.
right? Then
Mm-hmm.
nothing you can do is going to
Mm-hmm.
fix that? Nothing.
No. And you know, yeah, I totally 100% agree with you. I I say this so often, like in almost every other video, I say your relationship with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship in your life. But so often we keep waiting for someone else to come and love us unconditionally, right? That's the Disney dream. Like, oh, someone will love me unconditionally. They will accept me, support me for who I am. But we won't do that for ourselves.
Yeah.
Why are we waiting for someone else to come do that when you can't do that for yourself? Why would anyone else?
Yeah.
Right? So we have to start with ourselves. I think that's what I mean by working on ourselves is learning how to care for ourselves, learning how to nurture our relationship with ourselves, and you know, listening to nice music and taking nice baths are great, but that's not the extent of it, right?
Yeah.
It's about listening to our emotions, listening to our thoughts, identifying our needs, and prioritizing ourselves, and prioritizing that self love that you were talking about, the acceptance of like, hey, this is me, and I am amazing for this and this reason, knowing exactly why. I'm not
Yeah.
the kind of person, you know, where I'm like, you know, oh, I'm just gonna tell myself, oh, I'm amazing if I can't back that up.
I
But
know.
but
What is the why? What is the
yes,
why? Yeah.
and that why is the motivation, right?
Yeah.
And we need to know that why, because when we are in good moments and happy moments of life, happy phases, right? It's easy to like say those things. It's only when we are struggling with ourselves, it's when we are struggling with internalized concepts or messages
Yes.
we hear from others, or you know, after going uh through some magazines, like when we are looking at like, oh, you know, it's those moments where unless you identify why are you amazing,
Yeah.
what things you have that make you unique, that make you awesome, what life experiences have shaped you, that awareness helps you hold on to that self-love that you need when you need it the most,
Yeah.
right? And I'm like all about that difficult work. That's a difficult work for a lot of people, knowing who you are, why you are amazing, what makes you unique. But we need to have that so when life throws us a curveball, we can still hold on to our real self.
Yeah. I
And
always
yeah.
talk about, practicing all of these techniques in the dormant
Mm-hmm.
times. And that way you're prepared when things happen, because,
Yeah.
it's just like training your muscles, right? Like when you're working
Mm-hmm.
out, you train your muscles.
Yes.
If you're an athlete to reach a certain goal, right? And that way,
Mm-hmm.
when that say you're a runner, right? So you're training
Yeah.
and training and training, and then when it's
Mm-hmm.
go time and that gun goes off and you're running for that finish line, your body just knows what to do because you've been preparing it. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
We can
Yep.
handle our triggers the same exact way by practicing the tools that we need to in the times
Mm-hmm.
when we perceive like are the happiest. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes, definitely.
yeah.
No, I, I love that analogy. Like that's a beautiful analogy. We need to practice it so when we need it the most, you know, we can use it. I often talk about that when I'm talking to clients about mindfulness
Yeah.
and mindfulness practice, right? Especially for people who have never done it. I always tell them, I'm like, if you're trying to do it when you are really anxious, it's not gonna work. Your
No.
brain isn't capable of doing something new at that point, right?
Can you
So
can you tell my
yeah.
viewers why that's a bad idea to try to practice it while you're already heightened? So
Absolutely. No, so I describe anxiety as the literal physiological response of stress. Anxiety is on a spectrum of stress, right? And anxiety is on the higher end of the stress spectrum. And our body has one stress response system, which is fight or flight.
yeah.
We have different intensities, and context makes a huge difference, but we have one response system. So when anxiety is high, we are having this high fight or flight system. And if we think about it evolutionarily, you know, our mind is looking for the bear. Like it's like, oh, something in our environment is not right. I feel threatened, whether that's physical threat, emotional threat, or any other kind of threat that we are experiencing. Something is making us anxious at that point. And when you're in a high anxiety state, your mind is not capable of focusing on something new because those neural pathways don't exist. So we need to so neural pathways, for those who don't know, is like different brain cells connect with one another to create these pathways that is just how our thoughts and emotions work. So the thoughts and the emotional experiences that you don't have, they're not gonna happen when you are in a high anxiety state, because at that point your brain is hyper vigilant. And we'll often see, like, when we are highly anxious or when we are highly stressed, we are aware of so many different things, right? But we can't focus on any one thing, and that's because of that. So our brains are, this part of our brain, the frontal lobes of our brain that's responsible for critical thinking, new experiences, learning, memory, those things, this shuts down. The emotional part, the amygdala, the automatic part of our brain picks up, because as soon as you see the bear, evolutionarily, as soon as you see the bear, you have to run. You don't have the time to think about, oh, this is a bear. What kind of bear is it? Should I run? Okay, I'm gonna run. That's too late evolutionarily, right? So this part shuts down, which is why nothing new will register at that point. And this is true for mindfulness. This is true for self-love. This is true for all our affirmations. Unless we believe in them and we practice them and we own them in our day-to-day life when we don't need them, that's the only way we'll be able to channel them when we actually need it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's my long answer
I
to
want
that.
to add too to the fight and flight too, because
Uh-huh.
there's that component of freeze as well, right?
Yes,
So,
of
and
course.
that's the one where it's like we just feel stuck and we
Uh-huh.
can't do anything, and we're sort of like petrified, you know? And
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that's actually like one of my favorite freaking, and I don't even know if
Mm-hmm.
J.K. Rowling did this when she was writing the Harry Potter book, but she had that
Uh-huh.
whole scenario about being petrified because
Yep.
that happens as well, right? So
Yeah.
uh, let's say I'm somebody who has not practiced these tools going into anxiety, right? So
Uh-huh.
I am at a point where I can recognize my anxiety. What
Yeah.
are some of the tools that I can implement in a high anxiety moment
Mm-hmm.
to sort of soothe myself?
Okay. So I'm gonna give an easy one and a difficult one. Okay. The easy one is give yourself a physiological shock. And that might sound scary, but by shock just means make any one sense really strong. So it could even mean, putting some oranges in your freezer and just in that moment, just grabbing an orange just because it's so cold. Or grab ice, right? But when you grab something so cold, uh, it's a sensory shock. It's a sudden shift in one of your five senses that your brain cannot ignore. Your brain has to attend to that. And cold and ice works really well because it actually triggers the pain sensation. So
Yeah.
that's why, when we are like really cold, sometimes like it hurts. It's because cold is registered through pain senses in our nerves. And that's a great way to kind of like just shock our brain to like, hey, pay attention. And it's again, it's the snapping out, right? So by doing that, our brain starts working again, so we get out of that freeze, and it gives us that sudden moment. And then if you can, again, redirect your focus on your breathing, right? Sudden shock, focus on your breathing. And if you don't have anything cold, again, by focusing on any one part of your body can also work really great. By focusing on what are you seeing, just noticing your environment or any one specific thing can be really great. If you can get yourself to a safe place, something, again, emotional safety. If you are sitting close to someone like that you can trust, hold them. That in itself is going to do wonders. And because of that physiological reason, but also the emotional safety that you're gonna feel by just having someone to hold on to, right? So that's the easy one. And the
Yeah, it's the
difficult
energy
one,
shift.
Energy
That's what
shift.
we should strive for.
Change your environment, change the things, and your mind responds to your environment.
Yeah,
So energy shift. uh, the difficult part is anxiety is all about control,
yeah,
right? Like it's about, oftentimes we are anxious because we are trying to control something in our environment, and 90% of the times it's something that we can't actually control.
mm,
And the same thing goes for anxiety in itself. And I often talk about anxiety on a loop, that oftentimes we are anxious about something else, but then as soon as we notice that, now we are anxious about being anxious. So I
yes,
want to stop being
exactly.
anxious.
Exactly. People don't
Right.
realize this. It's so
Uh-huh.
easy to lose sight even of the initial cause of that anxiety. And
Yep.
because your body and your mind is already in this frenzied state,
Uh-huh.
like most of the time you're anxious about being anxious. And I
Yep.
want to bring up one point before you go into
Yeah.
like this difficult task for my viewers.
Yeah.
Because I experienced like these autonomic panic attacks for like
Mm-hmm.
years, right? In my
Yeah.
early 20s, and had no idea what the why was at that time,
Mm-hmm.
because we all go through our own processes of self-discovery. But
Mm-hmm.
what I realized that after I was aware of
Mm-hmm.
this response that I was having, I used
Mm-hmm.
to spend so much time just fighting the panic attack, when I
Yep.
learned to just let it freaking rise, because a panic
Uh-huh.
attack is only going to hit a certain point and
Yep.
and then be gone. that
Uh-huh.
that healed such a big part of me, because
Mm-hmm.
you
Yep.
get anxious over being anxious, which
Yes.
perpetuates the problem, makes the problem worse. and
Mm.
and we've got to learn that it's okay to lose control sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
In
Yes.
fact, I would argue it's freaking necessary for us to
Mm-hmm.
submit all of our control at some point
Mm-hmm.
to be able
Yep.
to get through something and let our body be at rest. So,
Absolutely. And it's funny you said that, because that is the difficult part that I was going to talk about.
see
Is
that? Eh,
yep, same wavelength. That when we are feeling anxious, if we allow ourselves to feel anxious, which is easier said than done, right? Like a lot of people might be like, what do you even mean? Like, let myself be anxious? No, I don't want to be anxious. Like, I want to stop being anxious. But the moment you let go of that control, that desperation, you stop being anxious about being anxious. You're teaching yourself to let go of that control.
yes.
And that's an experience that's difficult, but that when you start having that, you're also going to start having anxiety less and or anxiety attacks or panic attacks less and less and less, because you're not getting to that point. And it's a skill set that I think is so important in our life, because it extrapolates to other things as well,
Yes.
right? So not just about being anxious about being anxious, but being anxious about exam, being anxious about your goals, being anxious about a million things that are not in your control, right? The moment we stop trying to control every single aspect of our life, we start feeling more grounded in that moment.
Yeah.
And
Isn't
that's
that
the
the irony
practice
that
we need to.
we feel more in control?
Uh-huh.
that's
Yes.
that's the benefit of it. All right. The
Yep.
more you understand that you are not in control of anything,
Uh-huh. You know,
you
I
feel more
I
in control.
I have this image in my mind that I often picture when I'm like talking about this. It's a quicksand pit. I don't
Yes.
know if you're familiar with quicksand, right? But
Yeah.
it's like the more you fight, faster you're gonna sink in.
Yes.
And it's the same thing. The more we are fighting to control anxiety or control our life, more we are sinking in. The moment we let things be, we'll start feeling we are not sinking. We start
Yes.
stabilizing ourselves, right? And then we can start shaping or doing what is actually in our control rather than
Yes.
worrying about what's not in our control.
Then we could start seeking out that solid ground to build a strong foundation on, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh my
and
God, yes.
golly, and man, oh man. So I want to shift back in this last little bit of time because
Mm-hmm.
you are creative too, and I have so much respect for that.
Oh,
So, like,
thank
how
you.
long have you been YouTubing? I want you to talk about your experiences as a YouTuber and how you decided to like make that transition.
Yeah, so I started about a year ago, and when I started, I didn't own a camera. I had never used a camera. I didn't know, you know, uh, I knew YouTube, but I knew YouTube as a viewer. I didn't know like the whole creation side. I never used any editing softwares or anything like that. But I love computer geeky stuff, and I have
Yeah,
this huge passion for mental health. But I have had this deep passion and desire to do something bigger, to kind of like reach masses,
yeah,
because I love doing my one-on-one work for my day job, but I feel like because I was so lost, and when I was lost, I was so alone in my journey, and it was so painful. But also, so many things in my life were pure serendipity, like they just happened,
yeah,
and I still dream about being stuck in certain phases of my life,
yeah,
right? So it isn't done, it's not over. But I often think about, oh, what if that one thing hadn't happened, right? Would I have found my path? And that's the passion behind intentional living. That I wanted to make sure that I am putting out more messages to a wider range of people. So I might stumble across some people who might be on a similar journey or different parts of a similar journey as I went through, or might be feeling lost in different places, or might be just wherever they are in their journey. And that's the passion that I'm really trying to channel with intentional living. And
yeah,
I often talk about intentional living as what I've been talking about in our conversation about living with purpose, being mindful,
yeah,
having like having a mindset. And there are 4 pillars that I talk about like on my website, for an intentional living or an intentional mindset. The first one, the most important one, is our relationship with self. So relationship with yourself is the first one. Meaningful relationship with others is the second one, which is why I have so many videos on relationships. And the third is purpose and growth, knowing our purpose, finding our purpose, and growing from a place of self-acceptance and love, but also coming into our own, being who we want to be or who we're meant to be, depending on your
yeah,
philosophy and outlook.
yeah. And to interject, I just
Yeah,
want to
please go ahead.
piggyback on that really quick because I really don't think it's not, people get it twisted. You know, it's not like you're trying to change completely. I believe that we become
Mm-hmm.
more of who we are, right? When we
Yes.
unleash our capacity for growth.
Uh-huh.
So it's not just
Absolutely.
about losing weight and changing who you are or dyeing
Yeah.
your hair, changing who you are. You know, it's not about
Mm.
that. You could do anything external. I'm talking about the capacity to grow into the best of who you are,
Uh-huh.
the most full of who you are, allowing yourself
Yeah.
to grow into your divinity, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm so glad
Yeah.
you touch on that because I think that's an important
Mm-hmm.
pillar as well.
Yeah. And it goes back to that point of like knowing why you're amazing.
Yeah.
Knowing what your strength is, what makes you unique, what makes you you, and embracing and growing that. For me, that is self-growth. Knowing what makes you special, what life experiences shaped you, and just owning that to the point that it shines through your presence. To me, that's growth, not something that, oh, I don't like this about myself, so I'm going to change this. We can
Yes.
do that too, but that's not
It
how I
won't
see
fix
self-growth.
things. It
No.
won't fix things.
Well,
In fact, we're meant to be unfixed. You know?
there is nothing broken. There's nothing broken,
Exactly.
right? We have good and bad sides. But yeah, and the fourth part is health and wellness, because I
Yeah.
think all of this ties into our health and wellness. And wellness, again, I go by wellness not just being free of depression or free of anxiety or free of medical issues, wellness and health being truly, again, enjoying the gift of life. We have limited number of years,
Yes.
right? We all do. uh, what are we doing? Are we living the life that we want to live? And that's the question I often ask my clients. That's the question I ask myself most days. Am I living the life that I want to live, or am I working towards it? And
Yeah.
again, not from a place of self-hatred, not from a place of like being unhappy, but just enjoying the best of the gift that I have while I
Uh,
have it.
absolutely. Absolutely. If only people actually could look at life and
Mm-hmm.
understand that it's futile, and
Yep.
you know, and we
Mm-hmm.
need to appreciate, we need to step out into appreciation of every second that we have breath in our lungs, you know,
Absolutely.
every second. So
Mm-hmm.
oh my goodness, it's so easy to just fall into that fear trap, man. What if we,
Uh-huh.
what, oh, we have to stop being afraid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nothing good ever comes out of fear.
No.
Nothing good ever comes out of fear. So let love drive your change, love for yourself, love for others, right? If we just let love drive the growth, let love drive our decisions, and let love drive our life, it would be so much easier
Yeah.
than fear. But for that to happen, we need to learn to love ourselves first. Like, how can we let love drive it unless we learn to, you know, stop focusing on the negative sides and
Yeah.
focus on the positives that we have. So,
Yes.
which is
That's,
why I love your content. I love,
thank
oh
you
my gosh,
so
yes,
much.
this is amazing.
Thank you. Thank you
Yes.
so much, man. Could you tell my viewers where they could find you?
Absolutely, yes. So I am, everything is Join Dr. Suri. So on YouTube, my channel is called Intentional Living with Dr. Suri, or you can just say, just type youtube.com/join Dr. Suri. At Instagram, I'm Join Dr. Suri. And those are the two main platforms, but on all platforms, I'm Join Dr. Suri. So
Oh my
you can find
gosh.
me there. Yes. So, and yeah.
I have an idea brewing. All right. Because
Uh-huh.
I really, really love our conversation. I don't know what your
Mhm,
schedule is like, and I'm
mhm.
gonna pose the question that you and I might be able to do one of these like monthly and really go in with
Uh,
specific things, and I'll
mhm.
let you see what your time constraints are. But I would
Yeah.
love to have you back and just really like delve into like
Mhm.
pointed topics,
Yeah.
and then we can just go all in and tag team it, because I love
Mhm.
you. I love his content. Look
Me
him up.
too.
I love your content. You are
Thank you.
on point with everything you're talking about.
Mhm.
And the personal component, I think it's wonderful, because that's what fuels you. And like I always think about, like, you know, who would I have needed when I was a
Mhm.
kid or earlier on in life, and how can
Yeah.
I be that person for who I needed, you know?
Mhm.
So and
Absolutely.
and a lot of this is really, you know, it's just trying to fill the gaps with what the
Uh-huh.
world needs. And I am so appreciative that you present so much positive energy and just like practical tools, man. I
Yeah.
love your stuff. Your content's on point.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks. And yes, I will jump on that. Like, I love the energy, I love the vibe, I love being on the same page in terms of like the thinking wavelengths. And
yeah.
I'm sure let's do more of these, and let people decide what they want us to talk about, right? And
Yeah.
let people pick up the topics, what they want to hear, what they want us to delve into. And I would
Absolutely.
love to have deep conversations with you live on Instagram about all of
Yeah,
that.
you're awesome, dude. You are awesome.
Thank you.
So
So are
yes,
you. That's
I
amazing.
love it, love it. So, thank you so much, and I'll be in touch with you. I'm gonna
Uh-huh.
I'll drop you my phone number too, so you have that and you have direct contact with me. Okay.
That sounds wonderful. All right, we'll connect offline
All
then.
right. All right. Mwah. Thank
All
you
right.
so much,
All
Dr.
right.
Suri.
Thank
Yay.
you everyone for joining us.
Yay. I'm gonna accept. Awesome sauce. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I really think that he is such a wise person in his knowledge base for intentional living, which is something I completely advocate. I believe that We as human beings, right? We are all born with unique gifts and talents, right? And at some point, we just let fear freaking get the best of us. And then that decision to not confront those fears, right? And we talked about the anxiety component, right? I used to spend like not hours. I'm talking about fucking days avoiding my panic attack. Ah, I used to be terrified. And I would spend days just like trying to not let it go there, right? Uh, release yourself, right? Yourself. Release yourself. It's okay. It's okay. And I promise you, like another big thing that people go through is they think they're the only ones. They're the only ones. I'm the only one. No, no, I hate to tell you, but you're not the only one. All right. You're really not the only one. Anything that you've experienced in your life, I guarantee you, like fundamentally, that emotion that's tied to it, somebody else has felt, right? Maybe it wasn't the exact scenario that led you to that feeling, but people have common feelings. You know what I'm saying? That's how we're wired. That's how we're wired. You just got to know, though, you got to know that there are tools out there that you can use and put in place, man. And I talked about this before too. When I was young and I used to have to sing, I would become so scared about people looking at me that my face would freaking twitch unintentionally. You know what I'm saying? Because my body, I was just so self-conscious at one point. I'm telling you, ah, stop giving a fuck what people think, right? What matters is what you think. What matters is how you see yourself. What matters is your belief system and your potential, right? I went from being average in high school. I knew I was gifted as a musician, you know, that was like undeniable, you know, like I was known for that. I was known for being a singer. I was known for being a writer. Did I ever think of myself as an academic? No, no, not at all. I didn't think I was smart at all. I thought I was freaking unintelligent and stupid and had very low self-esteem. You know, when I went back to college, I started hitting those 4.0s. You know why? Because I started believing in myself and I started defining who the fuck I was instead of putting those labels that were spewed at me from other people, you know, to the forefront of who I am. I set the bar for who I am. All right. I set the tone for who I am. Right. I call who I am. And then not only do I call myself on who I am, it's what we do after those words are spoken. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, it's a lot. I really am so appreciative. I want to have Dr. Suri back because I think he and I can have some amazing conversation that is going to be loaded with tips and tools for anybody out there to really feel empowered in who they are and start walking in your gifts, right? Because that's what it's about. That's what it's about, you know? And again, too, I say for all of the creatives out there, for all of my musician family, for all my artists, you know, just feel. It's okay. It's okay to feel. All right? It's okay to feel. It's okay. It's okay to feel pain. It's okay. All right? It's okay to feel elation. All right? Just whatever you do, don't let your fear stop you from living your gifts. You know what I'm saying? Don't let your fear stop you from living your gifts. And don't think you have to change who you are to be worthy of love and acceptance. Please don't think that. Please don't think that. Right? Any change you make should be for you, right? Not to appease anybody else. All right? And who the fuck cares what you look like? That's my other thing too. Who cares, right? Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? What's your heart condition? What's your heart condition? What's going on in your brain? All right? You want to get that glow? Start doing the work inside. Because when you do the work inside, it makes everything else so much easy. Everything else so much easy. So I just want, I do want to say I'm excited for next week. All right, next week we're bringing it back to music. I have a friend of mine. He's a Spotify artist. He's a rap artist. He's a young dude. He's cool as hell. Cool as hell. T-Swim. T-Swim is going to be in the house. We're going to hear about his journey. And I really get excited over this kid because he's a young dude, fucking super talented, super, super talented. But that laser focus, we're going to bring it back to the laser focus you have to be successful in your art. All right. And we're going to talk about what it was like for him to sort of like mull through and develop a strong belief system too. I'm so freaking excited to talk with him. He's super fucking, like, his music is good, man. Y'all know I'm a hip hop head. I love this stuff. Oh my gosh, and I love all of you so much. So please come back next week. Thank you all for joining me, everybody who tapped in. I want to leave you with this. Universe, I am so prepared to receive all of the greatness and blessings you have for my life today and every day. Oh my gosh, don't you know what's inside of you? Don't you know it? Don't you know it? Oh my gosh, there's greatness inside of you. Greatness, 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 greatness. Don't forget that. Love you all.